This is Passport to Everywhere.
A trip to Japan isn't complete without a stay at a ryokan, a traditional Japanese inn that often has onsen hot spring baths. And Gora Kadan captures this authentic experience in a world-class way. Located in the heart of Hakone National Park, it is more than a hotel, but a true immersion into Japanese culture.
It's this sort of cultural experience of respect and looking out for the common good of everybody that is just remarkable. It doesn't exist in many places in the world.
Welcome to Passport to Everywhere with Indigare's Melissa Biggs Bradley. Melissa is the founder and CEO of Indigare, a travel and media company committed to inspiring and empowering people to change their lives and the world through travel while having a positive impact on the places they visit. On the show, Melissa will reveal a behind-the-scenes look at some of the world's most treasured places, transport you to dream destinations and hotels, and introduce you to some of the most extraordinary people she's met on the road. This is Passport to Everywhere.
Japan is having a moment. To say it is the darling destination of 2024 might even be an understatement. At Indigare, it's one of our most booked destinations of the year. And our latest traveler survey shows that it still ranks high on many people's lists as the place that they most want to visit soon. When I first visited Japan almost 10 years ago, I was lucky to stay at Gora Kadan, and my experience there was integral in shaping my profound reaction to the country. I'd argue that a handful of countries have actually truly shifted my perceptions, France and India among them, but also Japan. Its cultural focus on rituals that keep one attuned to being intentional, make mindfulness physically manifested in everything, starting with how one bathes or breakfasts. Almost every trip to Japan includes a stop in Tokyo, and I always recommend first or even 10th time travelers to spend a night or two at Gora Kadan, which is just 90 minutes outside the city. This one-of-a-kind getaway was originally a summer retreat of the Imperial family, and a stay here offers guests a taste of Japan's ancient culture in a luxurious way. The minimalist design has sliding walls made of rice paper. Guests are paired with an attendant who teaches them how to wear the inn uniform of a kimono, toe socks, and wooden flip-flops. And every stay includes a multi-course kaiseki dinner. Perhaps the best experience, in my opinion, is the onsen baths. The hot springs from the volcanic heated spring water. The healing waters attract international visitors and locals alike, who swear by its healing powers. Joining me to explore the property are Malcolm MacLean, the founder and current managing partner of Star Asia, and Ryutaro Hashimoto, the CEO of Gora Kadan and co-head of Japan at Star Asia. Ryutaro and Malcolm dive into the excellence of this place with me and share some details behind exciting future openings. We'll also explore the challenges of approaching lifestyle differences in hospitality and how to deliver joy across cultures. From the peaceful countryside to the bustling city of Tokyo, we'll dive into why Japan is on everyone's radar. I've been so looking forward to talking to both of you. Let's start, Malcolm, with you. I would love to hear about how you decided to focus on Japan for your career, because you started out as an investment banker and were working in the U.S., were educated in the U.S.
So I founded Star Asia in 2006 with a Japanese partner, Taro Masayama, and then Hashimoto San is one of our senior managing directors. How I came to Japan is my best friend from U.S. boarding school was Japanese, and he and I just became instant friends. And in my late teens, I spent time in Japan. I lived with him one summer during university. It happened to be the summer of 1989 when Japan was essentially taking over the world. They just bought Rockefeller Center in New York. They just bought Pebble Beach Golf Course. I was reading books about Japan Inc. And it was just an exuberant time here in Japan. It was easy to fall in love for me with the country, the culture, and the people. And I always had this dream to come back and start a business here. I did go to Wall Street after university. I spent the decade of the 90s on Wall Street and then started my own investment management company in 2000. And since then, I opened up a Japan office. I had a Hong Kong office as well as a Singapore office, and we did a lot outside of Japan. But since 2006 at Star Asia, we've been exclusively Japan. But yeah, it was sort of my dream come true. I found a great partner in Taro, and we started Star Asia, and all we focus is on Japanese real estate. We have now probably close to 70 people here in the Tokyo office in different parts of our business.
Wow. So Hashimoto-san, I know you're the co-head of Japan now at Star Asia.
Yes, I joined Star Asia in 2015. And before that, I joined Merrill Lynch in Tokyo, and I worked at the global principal investment division. And actually, the Blackstone took over my department in 2010. Then I moved to the Blackstone and spent 5 years until 2015. Actually, the Blackstone web is a very sophisticated, well-known, and so great company, obviously. But I wanted to do more business by myself, do the investment business more. Then I met with Malcolm and Taro and the Star Asia at that time, the fastest growing, still fastest growing company, but more fastest growing investment management company. And so that was so attractive for me. I decided to start my career again in here at Star Asia.
Now, I am then curious how Star Asia ended up with Gora Kadan, because this is a really historic ryokan. I've been lucky enough to stay there, and it is a very special, I would say almost a heritage institution in Japan. It is much more than just a hotel and a place to stay. It has serious roots and traditions. How did you, as an investment company, end up with this property, and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, it's really a wonderful story, and it really has most to do with Hashimoto San, and he could certainly jump in as well. But he had built over a number of years of relationship with the Fujimoto family. Mr. and Mrs. Fujimoto were the founders of Gora Kadan. Their families had purchased the property prior to that. The Imperial family after World War II had to divest of real estate properties, and this was the Imperial family summer home. And I believe Mrs. Fujimoto's grandfather bought the property, and then they turned it into a ryokan and sort of built the ryokan off of the original property. But Hashimoto-san had, through a mutual relationship with Fujimoto's, got to know them. They were trying to figure out this succession plan. They have no children. And it went on for a number of years where he was just advising them. And then they sort of made the decision that they wanted to sell. And Hashimoto-san said, I want to introduce you to Taro and Malcolm, people that I work very closely with. So Taro and I literally that weekend went out to Hakone for 2 days and spent time with them and talked about our philosophy, our dedication to Japan and Japanese culture, and that we would take essentially their baby and just make it better, which I think we have done. And now we're elevating Gora Kadan even further, which we'll talk more about, by adding 2 more ryokan locations. We're looking for a 4th one as well, but it has to be a very special place. That's really how it came about. And yeah, we just hit it off. And by the end of the weekend, we had a handshake and it was done.
And so what year was that?
That was the summer of 2017.
Can you talk to people who may not have been or don't know the region about what it is that not only makes Hakone so special and this particular property special, but also the concept of a ryokan? Because for a lot of Westerners, this is a whole new idea. It was the first time that I had stayed in a ryokan, and I still have unbelievable memories of the shiatsu master who would come to my room at night. And I've never been put to bed so beautifully as having a massage in your own bed in a ryokan. There's so many special traditions, from breakfast to the onsen. But for those who haven't experienced it, can you walk us through a ryokan and then talk about what makes Gora Kadan so particularly special?
So ryokan is a traditional Japanese inn. They don't always have to be ultra luxurious the way that the Gora Kadan is. There's lots of just small inns. Some of them have, 3, 5, 10 suites. Others, like Gora Kadan, has 41. It's very much of a Zen, spa-like experience. However, just quintessentially Japanese. You sleep on futon. Also in the rooms, there's a private onsen bath, again, which would be the hot water coming up from the middle of the earth. You have a Nakai-san, which is a butler. who is in traditional Japanese clothing, who would do everything for you. Basically, serve breakfast and dinner, which is traditionally what's included with a night at a Japanese ryokan. Would be served in your room. You can take that into a private room if you have family members and all of that. But that's very traditional. You can have Western or Japanese breakfast. And then the traditional dinner is kaiseki, which is basically a Japanese tasting menu. And there's lots of different, maybe 20 or 25 different dishes. I think what's unique about it is the combination of everything, which is Japanese hospitality, culture. Food is very important. There's beautiful gardens, hot stone that you can lie on. And it's just a wonderful Zen experience. And it's a great place to spend 1 or 2 nights. Hakone is about 75 minutes going towards Mount Fuji from Tokyo. So it's been a traditional weekend place for people from Tokyo, but people have been coming from around the world. At this point, it's about 50% of our guests are foreign. It used to be 100% Japanese, but it has become the quintessential Japanese experience to stay at the Gora Kadan. And we're quite proud of it.
I'm curious, since now more and more of the guests are coming from outside of Japan, what are some of the things that are often the most confusing at first for guests, but also ultimately the most rewarding for a stay? Because so much of the culture is new. How do you figure out the right balance of keeping the Japanese culture authentic and true and introducing it to guests who are clueless about what a Japanese breakfast is, for instance, or how to go into the onsen baths properly?
That is a very good question. We really monitor and discuss a lot to see how we can balance modern and traditional. Too traditional sometimes make uncomfortable. And also the guest appetite different, will change every year. So we closely monitor what the appetite and trend, and we want to be beyond their expectation. Also, we are continuously watching our competitors and thinking how make us unique and differentiate from the others. That would be the key point, I think.
Yeah, we want to be quintessentially Japanese. It is a Japanese inn. You have to wear yukata, you wear sandals when you're in the entire time you're in the ryokan. So people feel like they're really in Japan. And other hotels just can't do that, right? They can be Japanese style and feel very Japanese, but they're not Japanese. And when people come to Japan, one of the top reasons they come here is to experience the culture. And it is different. Some people don't know how to use chopsticks, but there are many other smaller ryokans that would frown upon that and say, we really don't want you here. Whereas at Gora Kadan, we would recognize that and make sure there was a fork and a knife and just try to make people feel at home in a space which is very unfamiliar and traditions that are unfamiliar. But I think a lot of foreigners get a so-called kick out of it in terms of, wow, I feel like I've come to Japan and not just staying in a regular hotel.
And I think, unfortunately, in so many places that we visit around the world, you stay in a Western style hotel, which is very similar to the way you live and bathe and sleep at home. And there is something so special about feeling more connected to the culture because you're experiencing something. Obviously, you're not staying in somebody's house, but you're experiencing some of the rituals and daily culture of what you would experience in a home. And so I do think it's just an incredibly impactful experience for someone visiting Japan.
There's some wonderful hotels in Japan, but yeah, you don't really experience true Japanese culture without going to a ryokan.
Yeah, actually, Melissa, your point is right. Actually, and one of our loyal customer who is Japanese guy, and he told us, your ryokan is luxury, but I can feel I come back to my mother's home. It's kind of cozy, but still luxury. It makes him very comfortable. So that kind of concept is very important, as you mentioned.
So I'm curious, because you're now expanding, and honestly, I'm thrilled to hear that we can share this with others. But as you think about that, I'm curious, how do you approach this from a new perspective as opposed to carrying on an existing tradition?
Yeah, no, it's a great point, because we do want to carry on the tradition. We don't just want to build a hotel and slap the Gora Kadan name on it. And the interesting thing about Gora Kadan, it was built in the 80s, so it does have some structural features that are really unique but it's feeling a bit older. But we've built, a couple new suites, and we're doing lots of renovation. That's bringing it up to its sort of current standards. In terms of the location that we're building in Mount Fuji, the piece of land was owned by the Fujimoto family. They had acquired it and had planned to build the Gora Kadan. It is a incredible site. It will be open in the spring of 2025. We're going vertical at this point, but it has some of the best views of Mount Fuji. It's up on a vista overlooking Mount Fuji. We also bought two golf courses that's combined. So it's 36 holes of golf. So it'll be an integrated sort of golf and ryokan. It will be a ryokan. We will make it slightly different and sort of more efficient in that there won't be, it'll be tatami mat, but won't be futon to sleep on. It'll be low bed. So it'll feel like a Japanese style bed, but there's a lot of effort and work by the Nakai-sons, the butlers, to roll those up every morning and then roll them back down. And we think that guests feel more comfortable in that type of bed. Now, we will be having many more food choices. We will have kaiseki, we will have sushi. We are building 4 villas to start and have land to build more, where the villas will be part of the Gora Kadan, where somebody wanted a little bit more privacy and their own plunge pool and their own onsen, but it will be very close to the main building. And then looking to maybe do some for sale villas as well. And that's what we're working through now. But it'll be a ryokan, 100%, with just some more features that I think the international luxury traveler will appreciate, bringing it into the 21st century.
And comparing the two, if you were trying to choose between the Mount Fuji ryokan and the original Gora Kadan, what are some of the attractions at each and the distances from each?
So they're both 75 minutes. So it's basically a triangle from Tokyo. So we do have access to a helipad. So if somebody wanted to travel there by helicopter, whether they were coming from Narita or Haneda, they could do that. There's a little bit more space there. It's less mountainous than Hakone. But we will have golf. We will have a lot of other programming in terms of hiking and fishing. But maybe Hashimoto San, you want to comment on the location as well?
Mount Fuji is one of the World Heritage Site, and actually even Japanese doesn't know the accessibility is very good, and you can take the bread train and have some kind of taxi. You can feel the different atmosphere. The Fuji surrounding is so much natural, and you can enjoy your hiking Mount Fuji. So Malcolm mentioned the food options using the food ingredients in the local food ingredients in there.
Yeah, we're going to do a bit of farm to table, more of a farm to table there, because it is much more of a rural location. Again, very close to Tokyo. But yeah, we're working on doing archery and maybe fishing expeditions. But you're so close to Mount Fuji that, yeah, that's a very important part of the location.
I know you've talked about possibly taking the brand even further. I believe you're thinking about maybe in Kyoto as well.
Yeah, and Kyoto is just one of the best cities in Japan. It's the old capital. If you're going to come to Japan, you do Tokyo, Hakone, and Kyoto, and then there's some offspurts from there. But those are basically the 3 places you want to go to. We were invited by the Kyoto government to submit a proposal. They actually asked for a number of proposals. It's a site right in Kyoto that is owned by the city. It used to be the city's water treatment plant in terms of drinking water. And we put forth a proposal. Our architects and designers are world class. Have designed, well, they designed the original Gora Kadan, but they've designed a number of other very famous places in Japan. And we put forth a proposal that the city loved. They didn't want another foreign-owned brand. They really wanted something traditionally Japanese. So we ended up buying this piece of land from the government, I guess, 18 months ago.
Right.
And we're going through the design process and the development process. And we have great renderings, which we'll share with you. And it will be completed in 2028. That's the plan at this point. We'll probably start construction next year. And in terms of the development phase and getting onsen. But it will be quite different because it'll be in a city or very near the center of Kyoto. So when you go to Kyoto, you want different food options. You want to be able to go to some of the nice, famous, great food restaurants in Kyoto. So we may only require one night at eating at the Gora Kadan, or we may not require it at all. We may allow some local guests on a limited basis to eat also there. So it'll be a little different, but again, it'll be quintessentially a Japanese ryokan in a world-class city. So we're quite excited about that because it's, again, elevating the brand and bringing it to a more urban location.
And I also wanted to add on thing at the site, the Kyoto, is originally owned by the Japanese Imperial family. And then the Hakone property is also owned originally Imperial family. So, and the kind of story we have, the Japanese Imperial family is kind of the Japanese god the people admire. And also, actually, the Fuji property, the Mount Fuji is also the old people admire Fuji Mountain as like a god. So it's kind of the Japanese god story can tell more rich experience to our potential guests, not only for Japanese, also the foreign guests to know about the Japanese culture in the depth. Actually, that would be one of the unique angle which the other brand doesn't have, and which we want to deliver not only the current state, but want to know our guests to know about how the Japanese culture is, what the Japanese culture is. So that would be the key point we wanted to raise on our importance.
I think that is one of the things that is also critical for international visitors is that sense of history. So being aware of the imperial family's connections in all these places is fascinating. And also, as you mentioned, Mount Fuji, the cultural significance of Mount Fuji to the Japanese is, I think, something that is a profound experience for people who will be visiting. And Malcolm, you probably have some of the best perspective on how Westerners can have a really authentic Japanese experience. And I'm curious, other than staying in a ryokan, what are some of the things you think a visitor who really wants to understand Japanese culture and tradition needs to do when they're in Japan?
There's so much to do, but obviously a traditional Japanese tea ceremony, watching a Japanese wedding, to obviously the cherry blossoms. If you can come in March timeframe, it's just the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And skiing is also a wonderful thing in Japan. And we'll talk a little bit more about why people are coming to Japan. That's actually one of the other great reasons. The skiing is by far the best skiing in the world. And I know people say that about a lot of places, but the snow is just unbelievable. I tell everyone to go to Hiroshima. Hiroshima is a great city. It's got a lot of tradition. It obviously has a difficult past, but it's one of the neatest cities. It's great. I love going to some of the shrines and seeing the ceremonies at the shrines. I was fortunate enough recently to go. I was in New York to it was an elevation of the new CEO of Sumitomo Mitsui Bank, where they did a tradition of smashing a sake barrel. And they have all these just great traditions that are really neat. But there's just so much to do here. I haven't done as much travel in the countryside as I've wanted to. And I hope to do more of that. But if you go down to Fukuoka or Okinawa, the food choices are different. And the culture is very different than it is in Tokyo, for example. But there's so many different cultural things to offer.
This is Passport to Everywhere, and I'm your host, Melissa Biggs-Bradley. Today I'm speaking with Malcolm MacLean and Hashimoto San about Gora Kadan, the one-of-a-kind ryokan in Japan. If you're eager to experience Japan yourself, head to indagare.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter, where we share travel tips and the latest travel intel. Now, back to the show.
Since you cater to both Japanese customers and Western customers at the properties, you have a particular idea of sort of how their expectations differ. What are some of the things that can be problematic balancing those two different expectations to please two different guests?
Yeah, no, it is a challenge. And maybe I'll take it from the Western side and Hashimoto-san can take it from the expectations from the Japanese side. But I think most foreigners that come to the Gora Kadan, for example, don't really know what to expect. And most people that are trying that do have an open mind. You do get some that are like, how come I can't do this or how come I can't do that? But for the most part, people coming here to experience Japanese culture, and they do have an open mind. But there is a balance because, we have the traditional loyal customers that have been going to Gora Kadan for 30 years, and we have to balance that. But for the most part, the Westerners, they slide right into the exciting opportunity. We are starting to see, for the first time, people coming back to Japan. Japan used to be, once in a lifetime bucket list trip, but it really has become a place that people can come and enjoy the food, enjoy the culture, and come back annually. But maybe you want to comment on sort of what the Japanese expect from my ryokan and how the year is fit or not.
Yeah. Actually, recently, even Japanese the lifestyle is more westernized. Even Japanese forget about the Japanese authenticity and traditional. So we give Japanese authenticity and traditional way and what is Japanese style, but still be comfortable. So uncomfortable is not good for not only Japanese and also for the foreigners, right?
And you mentioned, Malcolm, that people are coming back to Japan for not just one visit, they're repeating. We have noticed just an incredible desire for people to be visiting Japan in a way that I've not seen in all my years in the travel business. What do you think it is that has made Japan so incredibly popular at the particular moment? Because it is just, you can't meet the demand for it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's certainly from the investor side too, which we can go into. But from the traveler side, Japan's always been an enigma for people, right? It seems so far away and so foreign. And do they speak English there? And can I read the signs and can I get around? And I think the more people that come here, the more it goes back to say, yeah, you can have these wonderful experiences and you go to Gora Kadan and you can do this and you can do that. And it's foreign, but you can figure it out. There is some pent up demand from COVID-19. There is a bit of just word of mouth. More and more people want to go. I do think that people recognize that as cities around the world become less safe, we're seeing that in the US and Europe, Japan and Tokyo is incredibly safe. I always tell people that, you can come to Tokyo, which is the largest city in the world. There's 40 million people in central Tokyo or metro Tokyo. And you could walk down a dark alley at 3 a.m. As a female. No one would ever bother you. Never. You could drop your wallet and it will be at the police station the next day. And I also give the other example, millions of people go through Tokyo's train station every day. And you'll go there at 7:30 in the morning and there were 5 and 6-year-old kids, students, kindergartners that are wearing backpacks by themselves getting on the train going to school. Again, no one would ever touch these people. And, it's this sort of cultural experience of respect and looking out for the common good of everybody that is just remarkable. It doesn't exist in many places in the world. And I think people just are starting to figure it out and like Japanese food, and they're figuring out the culture and the safety. And I mentioned skiing earlier. I'd never heard of people going to Niseko or skiing until probably 4 years ago. Now everybody wants to go to Niseko. And I've probably had 20 friends in the last year that say, we're finally going to Japan. And it's really exploded. I think the other thing too is the currency depreciation. It's down by about 50% or 50% over the last few years. Tokyo's always been a very expensive place, but it's relatively cheap. And you also have the situation where, Japanese people, because their currency's appreciated, it's very expensive for them to go to Hawaii and other parts of the world. So they're staying in Japan. So it's kind of the perfect storm where the stars have come in alignment, where we're seeing the number of guests going past 2019 already, and the government is pushing to double that number again. So I think it's going to remain one of the hottest and most exciting places to visit.
Japan doesn't change much, but the government pushing their international travelers to come to Japan. And I think the international travelers recognize that Japan has the good content, the food, culture, and history, the kind of thing that the attractive part, like France and America, and the other European countries. I think that is one of the reasons why recently Japan recognized as the good travel destination.
Yeah, I also think they've made it easier to travel here. There's more flights into Haneda. Haneda is much easier than Narita. You did have the build up to the Tokyo Olympics. I think it just sort of put Japan on the map. Unfortunately, it didn't go as well as, or it didn't go as planned. The Rugby World Cup was here. There's a lot of great things, but just as a statistic, in I think it was 2014, there were only about 6 million visitors a year to Japan, foreign visitors. That number peaked out at 36 million in 2019. Again, government policies trying to make visas more accessible. So that's a 6x explosion. We can go through all that, what that created for the hotel industry here, the opportunities. But we're already back to a run rate of over 36 million, and the government's trying to go to 60 million by 2030, which sounds like a lot of people, but it's still fewer than the 60 million, still fewer than the foreign travelers that go to Thailand every year or Austria. So it's really been opened up to the world, and I think Japan has so much to offer, and they're excited to offer it to the world. I think.
Yeah, actually, looking at the 2014, only a few luxury hotels in Japan. So Japan doesn't have the afford to accept the luxury traveler in the world at that time. But recently, the luxury hotels developing a lot and they're building a lot. And that is part of the reason why the luxury traveler wants to come more, I think.
Well, I mean, for example, when I first, started coming here in the 2000s, there were no real big foreign brands. I mean, the first hotel that was built was in 2002, 2003, which was the Grand Hyatt in Roppongi. That was really the only sort of 5-star foreign brand. There was the Imperial to stay at, and obviously the Otani and a few of the Japanese older, not as luxurious brands. But, it has in the last 20 years exploded. And that's, I think, the result of it is finally hitting that spot where people really want to be here.
And I'm curious because my perception during COVID and the lockdown was that Japan actually suffered less than many other countries because there was a lot of internal Japanese domestic travel or a lot of discovering their own country and spending time in hotels. Is that accurate?
Yes. So Japan completely locked down. I mean, I was not able to come into Japan, even though I had business here. I wasn't able to come for 2 years. My partner, Tara, who's a Japanese citizen, was only able to come in and had to do hard quarantine for 2 weeks, basically solitary confinement. But, prior to the pandemic, if you had hay fever or were sneezing, you wore a mask. You would it's out of respect. You're not going to get anybody sick with hay fever, but out of respect, you don't share those germs. So they were very aggressive in terms of the lockdown. But, we operated our entire business. Unfortunately, we had a team here during the whole pandemic. People were coming to the office. They might have been driving instead of taking the train for a while, but we were fully operational. And it really created a lot of opportunities because, hotels were empty. As a side note, we ended up buying during the pandemic about 45 hotels. This is, again, outside of Gora Kadan, mostly limited service, but it created that opportunity because no one was here. We didn't have to lay off people the way that other hotels did. I mean, hotels were empty. I mean, literally empty here, the foreign hotels. And yes, I think because it was a Japanese-run business, Japanese felt comfortable going there. They knew that, there'd be good protocols. They wouldn't get sick. They knew there would only be other Japanese people. And they knew it was only 41 suites and you had space to, stay in your room. You could eat your meal in your room. And it was sort of a safe haven in a lot of ways.
Malcolm, you mentioned that it's not just travel that's booming in Japan right now, but there's a big appetite for investment. I'm curious on your perspective on what you've seen in trends there and what you think that is attributed to and what it presages for the future.
Yeah, I think a number of different things. One is global investors have been underweight Japan for 35 years. I mean, anybody you talk to has been underweight Japan. It has been in a deflationary environment for the last 30 years. So it's been sort of a strange way. It's also, there's high barriers to entry in terms of investing here. You have language, you have cultural, you have all of those things. I think it's attracting a lot of capital due to the issues in China, the economic issues, the bit more lockdowns, capital flows are really tight. And I think people are recognizing that Japan is the second largest developed economy in the world. I mean, China's bigger, but it's developing. And we have a much different rule of law here. I mentioned earlier about handshakes. Handshakes actually mean a lot here. I mean, we do have contracts, but handshake still is one of those things that works here in Japan. We have a situation where, again, currency depreciation, assets and businesses look a bit cheaper if you're using US dollars, which is quite strong. The other thing is, from a real estate perspective and corporate perspective, we still have 0% interest rates. The Bank of Japan has kept the base rate at zero. So if you look at funding costs, which in the US went from 1% to now 6%, that has drawn out a lot of capital, and you're starting to see again more people come here. And I think it's kind of like the traveler. It's been discovered, and people are figuring out that they can operate here. They typically rely upon people like us to be their asset manager and sort of help navigate the Japanese enigma. But there is a lot more capital coming here, and I think it's going to continue as other places have become more dangerous and a bit more difficult to invest in.
I'm curious about what you both would consider the things that people should know about travel to Japan if they haven't been before. So if you want to get someone in the right state of mind to visit Japan and have an amazing vacation, what should they be bearing in mind? Or what misconceptions should they get rid of?
Yes. I think just having an open mind that you are coming to a country that's very different from the country you're coming from. I think having patience, things just operate differently here. That could be anywhere where somebody from New York says, how come I can't get this, that, and the other thing? Well, it's not New York, right? So I think the patience, I think having an open mind and being creative and wanting to do new things. Things are different here. Food's different. But what I like is you come to this place. I mean, and I'm probably going to jinx myself, but in 30 years coming here, I've never gotten sick, right? I mean, there's just that high quality attention to detail that is second to none. But I think it's having people be, open-minded in terms of trying new things, trying new foods, going new places, and again, having that patience. You have a couple.
Right. Actually, Japanese, comparing to the other countries, Japanese cannot speak English, but they're very friendly and a little bit shy actually. But they're open-minded, try to be help to you. And that will be the misconception. But we are to be, try to be exchange conversation more. And also the one thing some travelers book told you is the tips is rude. It's not actually rude. Actually, some Japanese appreciated your tip. So,
but most of them won't take it. Like in a hotel, they won't even take it. But yes, it's becoming a little bit more socially expected and accepted.
That's right. Some foreign travelers asked me the tip, accepting the tip is illegal. It's not actually illegal, actually. So, but some people doesn't take the tips, but some people appreciated your tips.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's much more appreciated than expected. I think, at least in the US, it's so expected now that you tip at 25%. I think the numbers started some places 22 to 30%. And here they just appreciate it because it's not expected.
So I have to ask you a last question, Malcolm. You did give me, however many years ago, that great tip for your favorite restaurant in Ginza. Any restaurants or new places that we may not know about that you think are must visits for people, either first time or multi-time visitors to Tokyo?
Oh my gosh, there's so many wonderful places. Yeah, Yoshitake is still one of my favorites. There's a lot of other sushi restaurants that are popping up that are a little bit easier to get into. I like Ichiyama. Hashimoto San and I have been to Sugawara, which is a good place. One of the other places that I think I might have told you about, Shima, the steak restaurant in Nihonbashi, which is another great spot. But there are some, Ukaite is another place for a foreign traveler. Teppanyaki. I mean, there's more than you could ever imagine here in Tokyo.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both. I can't wait to be back and to experience Gora Kadan and also to see all that you're doing with making that dream a reality and making Gora Kadan a world-class brand, because we certainly need new ways of thinking around hospitality in the world.
Fantastic. Well, very much appreciated. All the best and safe travels.
Special thanks to Malcolm and Hashimoto San for joining me today. If Japan is on your travel list, be sure to consider adding Gora Kadan to your itinerary. You can head to indagari.com to read our review and book directly. And if this episode leaves you wanting more, consider listening to my episode with best-selling travel writer Pico Iyer, who's lived in Japan for over 3 decades. We dive deeper into what's so extraordinary about the country, and I share a few travel insights for making the most of a trip to the island. Coming up on Passport to Everywhere, we're headed to London with a multi-Michelin-starred chef and later to Mount Everest with legendary mountaineers. Join me as we listen to stories of some of the most inspiring people on the planet, achieving and defining greatness. In the meantime, don't forget to rate and review us, and please share the show with other travelers. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for joining us at Passport to Everywhere. We hope you'll join the journey and subscribe. For more travel inspiration, visit indagare.com. INDAGARE. This has been Passport to Everywhere.